welcome. We're going to give people another minute or so to come in. We appreciate you having you here. Okay, we're going to get started. I believe my recording has started. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here for this webinar about the NEH Mellon Fellowships for Digital Publication. I am Megan Brown, a program officer in the Division of Research Programs at the National Endowment for the Humanities and Publication. I am joined by Jacob Lusk, who will be monitoring the chat during my presentation, and he will be helping us facilitate questions at the end. I'm going to be speaking for about 30 minutes, and then we'll spend the rest of our time answering your questions. Please just put them in the chat at any time, during or after the presentation, and Jacob will read them out loud towards the end, and we'll make sure we get everything answered. If you have a personal question or something that you'd rather not put in the chat, you can always email us. There will be an email at the end. I'm going to begin with an overview of the NEH Mellon program and what kinds of projects are supported. I will discuss eligibility and what is new in this year's round of competition. Using the review criteria for the program, I will highlight some tips and some common mistakes. I'll end with some information about submitting the application and what happens after that. As I discuss the grant opportunity, I am going to mention the notice of funding opportunity several times. And I may call this by our acronym, the NOFO, because we're the government and we love acronyms. This document can be found on the NEH Mellon Fellowship webpage, and I'm going to recommend reading it thoroughly, whether you've applied before or not. The NEH does its grant work through 6 divisions, each focused on a different kind of work or audience. The Division of Research Programs supports the work of scholars, individually or collaboratively, on projects that embody exceptional research, rigorous analysis, and clear writing or communication. The major goal of the NEH Mellon Fellowships is to support innovative digital interpretations of humanities research. This is an individual award for scholars whose significant humanities projects require digital expression and publication. Proposals from all disciplines and fields are welcome. Strong applications make a compelling case for both the humanities content of the project and its digital design. What kind of contribution will your project make to existing research and discourse? We ask that you explain why and how digital means enable or enhance your intellectual argument. For example, will you have text that incorporates multimedia components, existing scholarly publication platforms, visualizations, interactive elements, or flexible reading pathways? The NEH Mellon Fellowships for Digital Publication can be used for 6 to 12 months of full-time work. Full-time means you must devote 100% of your time during the fellowship to the project, free of teaching or service obligations. The tenure must be continuous. You can't take a break in the middle. We accept voluntary drafts for the narrative and work plan sections submitted by February 28th or earlier. I'm going to talk about those drafts again in a minute. The deadline for this program is April 19th. Notification is in late December. Start dates can be any time between January 1st, 2024 and September 1st, 2024. The NEH Mellon Fellowships program will make approximately 5 awards this year. based on the average application numbers, that makes funding rate somewhere between 15 and 20%. Do not let these numbers discourage you. It is a competitive program, but you can't get a grant unless you apply. If you do not get awarded in the first time around, we do encourage you to ask for panelists' feedback on your application, revise it accordingly, and reapply at the next deadline. A new set of panelists will review your resubmission and will not know that it has been rejected before. For the NEH, every application is a new application. The NEH Mellon Fellowships are a special opportunity for digital publication that is closely related to our general fellowship program. There are some significant differences, however. The product for a fellowship can be print, digital, or hybrid publication. The applications have different requirements for their format and appendices and attachments. Because of the significantly higher number of applications for the main fellowship program, the fellowships competition does not read drafts, unfortunately. These are separate competitions, and you may not apply to both at the same time. So we recommend that you consider carefully which would be a better fit for your project. Please note that the fellowships competition has an earlier deadline. It's going to be April 12th this year. If you would like to learn more about this opportunity, my colleague Claudia Kinkela will be holding a webinar on Tuesday, February 8th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. The link for the registration is available on the fellowship's webpage. So what kinds of projects do we expect to see in the NEH Mellon Fellowships program? You may create digital monographs, peer-reviewed articles, websites, virtual exhibitions, translations with annotations or critical apparatus, digital models or manipulables with interpretive content, or digital critical editions. You do not have to finish your project by the end of the grant period. Here are some recent examples. Catherine Bunn Marcuse was awarded a fellowship in 2018 to work on a collaborative reframing of Franz Boas's documentation of the Kwakiutl First Nation in 1930. Her digital monograph is forthcoming from Raven Space. Helene Billis was awarded a fellowship in 2019 for a translation and editorial work on La Princesse de Clèves by Marie-Madeleine de Lafayette, a digital critical edition of a 17th century French novel. Her digital edition was recently published by Lever Press. Lauren Tilton, also a 2019 awardee, contributed to the collaborative project Layered Lives, which maps documentary expression from New Deal America and was recently published by Stanford University Press. This is a partial list of projects and activities that the NEH does not fund in this competition. For a full list see the guideline documents under funding restrictions. I highlight this because if we cannot fund something that is on this list. One of the funding restrictions we get asked about the most is the prohibition against standalone video documentaries. We do not fund projects in which video is an integral part. So we do fund projects in which video is an integral part of the argument, but we do not fund projects in which video is the only part that is available. Our rule of thumb is that if the video contains the whole argument, which could be viewed through a medium such as television without change, and requires no interactivity to understand it, it meets the definition of standalone and is not eligible for the program. If you're looking for funding to make a documentary, print book, or traditional ebook, I'll note that our fellowships program funds work in all of these products. Proposals from all disciplines and fields in the humanities and humanistic social sciences are welcome. We have had archaeologists, ethnographers, historians, literary scholars, scholars of dance, architecture, music, and television, and more. We especially welcome independent scholars and junior scholars. You do not need to be affiliated with or on the tenure track or affiliated with a particular institution or organization. All U.S. citizens and foreign nationals who have been living in the U.S. for the 3 years preceding the application deadline are eligible. You do not have to have an advanced degree, but you cannot currently be enrolled in a degree program. There's one slight caveat to that. If you are currently enrolled and you have satisfied all of the requirements for a degree and are only awaiting its conferral, then you are eligible, but you must include a letter from the dean of your conferring school or your department chair attesting to your status as of the application deadline, which this year would be April 19th, 2023. If you applied last year, many of the features of the application package will look familiar. The narrative section is limited to 3 pages. This page limit should give you plenty of space to explain both the intellectual work you are doing and its humanities significance, as well as presenting and justifying the digital design of your project. Like last year, we require a 1-page bibliography, a 1-page work plan, and a 2-page resume. Please just, if you have more than that on your resume, we understand. Be selective. Don't make the font smaller. Called the Description of Digital Project. This can be between 1 and 5 pages and can include a sitemap, wireframe, or annotated screenshots of the prototype site. Your goal with this attachment is to give your peer reviewers a clear sense of the digital features and capabilities that make your project stand out. If you're unfamiliar with sitemaps or wireframes, our frequently asked questions has an explanation of what we're looking for. We are also asking for a new conditionally required attachment called the Letter of Community Support. If you are working with an extant living community, whether it's a tribal community, a religious group, a social group, or a company, we ask that you include a letter from a member of that community to indicate their support for your project. Finally, if your project involves extensive visual materials, translation, or a substantial data set, we ask for samples of that in a conditionally required appendix. While a hosting agreement is not required, if you have one in place or are in talks with a library or publisher to host your project, you may submit a letter from the potential host as part of the appendix. The Notice of Funding Opportunity describes each of these attachments in great detail, so we recommend reading carefully to ensure that you have all of the required or conditionally required elements. NEH staff will read and comment on draft narratives submitted before or by February 28th. Please note that we can only comment on 1 draft per person. Email your draft to fellowships@neh.gov and put NEH Mellon draft in the subject line. Do feel free to include the work plan in this document for feedback purposes. Applicants generally find that NEH staff comments helpful, but you should know that submitting a draft is entirely voluntary, it is not required, and it does not guarantee a favorable outcome on your submission. As we move to application tips, you should start out by thinking about the timeline of your application from submission to notification and plan ahead. The federal grant process is long. It's about 8 months for the NEH Mellon Fellowships. The first step is not actually even on this diagram. You must begin by signing in to grants.gov. New this year, just to make things extra fun, you'll be asked to sign in using login.gov. If you've used both in the past, you will have the option to link your 2 accounts and afterwards use login.gov to sign in. If you haven't used either, you'll need to register for login.gov, but once you have, it makes the sign-in process very quick and easy from then on. I recommend you do this soon. You can do it well ahead of the application deadline, as depending on your circumstances, it can occasionally take a bit of time, and you don't want a technical snafu to delay your submission. Likewise, I recommend that you submit your actual application package a day or so ahead of the deadline, if at all possible, so that last-minute technical glitches do not delay you. Late submissions will not be evaluated. Submission is by April 19th, 2023. Peer review panels meet in June. The NEH's National Council on the Humanities, which meets 3 times a year, will review the staff's funding recommendations in November. The chair of the endowment, Shelley Lowe, makes the final funding decisions shortly thereafter, and notifications to applicants are sent out in late December. Keep these steps in mind and the timeline in front of your head as you plan and prepare the application. Before you start writing your application, your first step should be to study the criteria that we give to the reviewers to guide their evaluation of your project. You can find these under section E1 of the Notice of Funding Opportunity called Application Review Information. These can help you construct your narrative. Under Attachment 1 Narrative, you will see that each subheading of the narrative is keyed to one of these criteria. I highly recommend that you use these subheadings in your narrative to make it easy for your reviewers to see how each part of your application speaks to the appropriate criterion. Remember that the criteria can be relevant to more than one section, and that taken together, the parts of the narrative should form a coherent whole. I will go through the individual criteria with some further tips. Writing a grant application is its own genre. It's different from a scholarly essay or an article or a book prospectus, and it can use a bit of strategy. Under the subheading Significance and Contribution, tell your reader in a succinct way what your project is about and why it is important. You should explain what it will contribute to your specific field in a way that a humanities generalist can understand. Our peer review panels are often made up of people from many different fields, and so you want to be able to speak to people in a variety of disciplines. You should also make clear why your digital publication is essential to your project. The application will be more compelling if you can situate your project in the broader context of humanities research and knowledge. So ask yourself, how will my project change the scholarship? How will it help us think differently? If we take a step back, does it tell us anything larger about the field? Press yourself to see the broader significance of your work for the humanities. One way to stress your contribution is to describe how your work fits in with other work in your field that has addressed the same subject. A short survey of where the scholarship is can be very helpful. Are you taking research in a new direction? Are you revising a long-held assumption or adding new evidence? In short, what is unique, important, or new about your project, and how will it enhance the scholarship in the field? Generally, peer reviewers find that a well-written, clear application is a predictor of the quality of the planned publication. So writing an articulate and coherent application is important. Remember to stay within the 3-page limit of the narrative and follow the formatting guidance. Do not go below 11-point font or reduce your margins to squeeze in more words. Instead, choose your words carefully. I recommend avoiding footnotes because they take up precious space. The other main components are the 1-page work plan, the 1-page bibliography, 2-page CV, and the digital project description, which can be 1 to 5 pages, the community letter of support if needed, and the appropriate appendices. Follow the guidelines carefully so that your submission is not declared ineligible on grounds that it is not formatted properly. Under the subheading in your narrative called Organization Concepts and Methods, articulate specific research questions and explain the methods, concepts, and approaches you will use to address them. Are you using previously untapped primary sources? Are you proposing an entirely new interpretation of your subject? Are you adapting a methodology from another field? How is the methodology appropriate to the project? Explain the digital methods and reasons for choosing a particular technology, platform, or software. Where possible, provide an outline of the chapters or sections, and you can feel free to refer people to the sitemap or wireframe in the design attachment for that purpose. Be clear about the data your project will generate or collect, and include, if relevant, a statement about public access and any rights or requirements that come into play. For example, if your project plans to use materials that are currently under copyright, be clear about who owns the copyright and any negotiations you have made to publish. If you plan to collect any data from the public, you should include a statement explicitly explaining how user data will be used and what privacy protections will be in place. You should explain what standards you plan to follow to ensure access to materials you present and what steps you are taking to ensure accessibility by diverse populations, such as the inclusion of image captions for screen readers. Use your bibliography and optional appendix to strengthen and illustrate your points regarding significance, method, and contribution. If you're proposing a dissertation revision, which is totally A-OK, clearly state this and explain the changes, revisions, and expansions that you plan and how they will improve the original work. You must go beyond the original dissertation. It cannot just simply be a conversion of the dissertation to a digital format. For editions and translations, digital exhibitions, and digital models, describe the project's scholarly apparatus. For example, any kind of introduction, annotations, and other paratextual materials. The interpretive nature of your project should be clear. What will the NEH award be used to fund? Provide a detailed work plan in 1-month segments. Be realistic about how much work you can get done during the grant period. Don't overpromise. Be specific and think about what stage your project will be at when the award period starts. Remember that this will be 9 or more months from your application date. You should feel free to state where you are now and where the project will be when you start the grant period. Many applicants use a chart or a list to make the work plan clearer and easier to process. You do not need to complete the entire publication during the grant period, but you should provide a reasonable timeline for completion. If you'll be relying on institutional support or other resources to assist with technology-related work, describe this and the roles of the people involved, and whether funding for this assistance is already in place. This fellowship is an individual award paid directly to you and is designed to support the work of a single scholar. You may seek funds as an individual who is part of a larger collaborative project, but you should clearly explain how the work will be divided and the extent to which each collaborator's contribution depends on that of others. If your project is truly collaborative and you need funding for a team, you should consider the NEH's Collaborative Grants Program, which has a specific evaluation stream for scholarly digital projects. Applications for the Collaborative Grant Program are due November 29th this year. Under the subheading in the narrative called Competencies, Skills, and Access, explain how your prior work led to the current project. Emphasize your academic strengths and achievements that are relevant to the present project. If it's a new field for you, explain why you have chosen to explore it. Give a realistic self-assessment of your experience with digital humanities methods or tools that you propose to use. Many people are stronger in one area than the other. Be honest and don't exaggerate. NEH Mellon Fellowships want to encourage academics to venture into digital publication and explore its possibilities. We don't expect you to be an expert in everything. Finally, describe what the final digital publication will look like, how it will work and serve the intended audiences, and how it will be disseminated. Is this primarily for general audiences or scholarly audiences? Who is it aimed at? Who will host it? Have you thought about its long-term sustainability? If at all possible, you should explicitly describe how long your project will be maintained, by whom, and what will happen to it after the period of active maintenance is over. Will it be archived somewhere? What parts of the project will be preserved? You are not required to have a hosting contract or publication contract prior to application. If you do have one, or you are in negotiations with a hosting institution, you may include a letter from them in the appendix. Reviewers usually look favorably on projects that undergo rigorous peer review prior to publication. Do include a URL if one exists, such as to a GitHub, a prototype site, or something else. But if you do include a URL, make sure there is something there for evaluators to see when they go to it. Broken links and blank sites can often confuse evaluators. I want to put these important numbers and dates in front of you again. When planning your application, remember that the actual start time for your project can be up to 15 months after the submission date. We often have applicants who apply several times before an application is successful. If you do not get an award in the first time round, we encourage you to ask for the panelists' feedback on your application, revise accordingly, and reapply. If you are successful, we also encourage you to ask for your panelists' feedback. Sometimes they can identify a tweak or a change to the project that would make it stronger. A different set of panelists, if you reapply, will review a resubmission, and they will not know that this is a returning project. We do encourage you to talk to us either in the next few minutes in the question and answer session. In future discussions, you can contact us by email. You guys to get in touch, submit a draft if at all possible, and otherwise get our feedback so that we can make the strongest application possible. I'm now going to turn to Jacob and see if there's any lingering questions in the chat.
Yes, just want to encourage people to keep submitting questions to the chat if you'd like, and I can try to answer them, or if they're sort of more broadly applicable, we can bring them up verbally so that Megan can address them all, and we do have a few. So Megan, we had a question about collaborative projects. Can you talk a little bit about how someone might apply if they're part of a team?
Sure. So we've definitely had that happen in this program before. If you're applying for your contribution to a larger collaborative project, we ask that you clearly define throughout the application how your section of work is defined. We're looking to fund a clear tranche of work that then contributes to the success of the overall project. That work, if it's reliant on someone else, you should explain how it is reliant on others' work. For example, if it is a collaborative editing project, how that process works, you should explain. And you should explain this is sort of where the project is at this moment and how it's going to be completed. If anyone wants, I can find links to show people examples of that. We've had several. And if, by all means, email us and we'll send you some examples.
Thanks, Megan. We also had a question about applicants who are planning to maybe hire someone to help them with some of the more technical elements of the project. The person mentioned specifically web design, help with video files. The question they asked was about whether they could use the funds for that. And as I mentioned in the chat, these funds are intended as salary replacement, so you can use the money really however you want. But I thought I'd bring this to your attention, Megan, in case you had anything to add to that, and also, you know, what technical skills, if any, are expected of applicants in the review process for the program.
So by all means, you can use the money to help hire technical assistants. This is an individual award that is paid directly to you. We do not ask for a budget or receipts. You may use this money for anything that facilitates the eligible work activities that are listed in the work plan. So if you need this money to hire a web design person to help you achieve the vision for your project, if you need it for childcare so that you have time to code, if you need it for a salary replacement so you can pay your rent during your time not teaching, all of those are just fine.
Great. We have another question. Well, we just got a question a second ago about putting together a budget. So I just want to clarify that in this program, again, sorry, Megan?
No budgets.
No budget. So again, this program is providing you funds as salary replacement. You know, if you're a scholar, the expectation is that you'll step away from your teaching and administrative duties to work full time on the project. But regardless of your current employment, the funds are meant to act as salary replacement. So you don't have to give us a budget, and you don't give us a budget because it's not asked for. Don't give us anything that isn't asked for in the NOFO. And there'll be no financial reporting at the end of the award period. You'll only be asked to report on your performance, on your activities, and what you think the impact of the award and the project will be. So no worries about budgets. We have another question. What's the timeline for getting feedback on drafts? The deadline is February, but when will they hear back?
The deadline is February, and I will get you you will get feedback within a month. In the past, it has often been within 2 weeks, but I'm going to knock on wood and say no later than by the end of March. If you all suddenly gave me lots and lots of drafts, I want to make sure I'm not overpromising.
We've gotten a couple questions about whether independent scholars or anyone who's not affiliated with a university can apply.
Yes. We had either 3 or 4 independent scholars received awards in this past cycle. We definitely encourage independent scholars to apply.
Yes, this person noted that a lot of the winners appear to be associated with a university. That sort of comes with a lot of our programs that most of our applicants are associated with the university. But again, we really encourage applications from independent scholars, and we're always very happy when we get to fund them. So please feel free to, or please apply. Yes.
Yes, and I'd also like to clarify that a PhD is not required. You can have a bachelor's, you can have a master's degree, that is just fine. In fact, no degree is required. You just cannot be in a program at the moment, in a scholarly program at the moment. That's the only restriction there.
Yeah. And so to just really wrap all that up, because we just got a couple more questions, you can have any, everyone is eligible to apply that is a US citizen who is not current. The only exception is that if you're not a US citizen, you must have lived in the US for 3 years, and you cannot be a student currently enrolled in a degree program. If you meet both those criteria, then you are eligible to apply to the program and to receive an award if you're selected. We just got a question that's sort of about how the payout of the award, and a lot of people ask about how the awards are paid out. So I work with these questions a lot. So again, funds are meant as salary replacement. A lot of people make more than $60,000 a year or $5,000 a month. So how does that work out for a lot of folks? For some of our award recipients, their institutions will agree to top off their salary during the award period. Sometimes people combine, schedule their award period to coincide with a sabbatical in which they're getting some income from their institutions. NEH has no issue with you applying for other grants and receiving funds from other grant programs as long as you're continuing to work on your NEH project full-time as proposed. But certainly that figuring out how to take the grant and work on your project and see no reduction in your income is something that people run into sometimes. Unfortunately, that the award is for $5,000 a month, and there's no flexibility there. That answers the question. Megan, did you have anything to add to that?
No, the only thing I would add is that it is paid directly to you, and so there is no payment to your university, and your university cannot take indirect payments from it.
Yeah. Well, to clarify, you can route the money through your institution if you want to, but it's your choice. You can put it through. They can withdraw money to cover your fringe benefits, for example. But as Megan said, your institution cannot take a cut of the money for itself. All the money is yours and needs to be spent on your salary or your benefit package, essentially. If you have any more questions about that, feel free to reach out to us. That's something that both applicants, grant administrators, have lots of questions about. It's, I think, somewhat unique in the grant world, so feel free to reach out. Need to be able to apply?
No, you do not. When we've had people apply for collaborative projects in the past, quite often they are. However, we've also had people, for example, someone who was doing art historical work on a very large interdisciplinary project, and their contribution was art criticism. So they were not the primary investigator of the entire project, but we funded just their tranche of work on it. So yes, you do not have to be the PI.
We just got a question that's simply, what is the expected output? And maybe I'll broaden this question a little bit for you, Megan, to say, are there any types of output that are there any sorts of product types that are prioritized, or what's kind of the range of things that we funded before? Could you speak a little bit to that?
So the goal of this grant is to fund scholarship that requires digital publication. And that can be anything from scholarly digital editions. People are doing some very fascinating things with network analysis and digital mapping in combination with textual encoding, for example. We've also had videographic criticism with embedded additional scholarly context. So there was a recent award for a project that is examining characterization in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul through videos and apparatus. We've had projects that combine sound, image, and text to analyze modern music or ballet movements. And so, things that are heavily multimedia are quite common in this program. Um, the thing that connects all of these is that you can't do it with print. You can't do it with a traditional ebook. Um, it's something that is not read from start to finish and in a linear format. So we're looking for the things that need these alternative ways of interacting to take advantage. We don't expect that it has to be published by a university press. Although all of my examples in today's presentation were, that is something that is not required. And we have some projects that are coming out in Steam. There's going to be a playable edition of early modern Italian board games coming out in Steam. And we have other things that involve, quite a few things that involve 3D. Now, admittedly, some of those are coming out in scholarly presses. There's a, oh, sorry, there's getting a little feedback there for a second. There's Elaine Sullivan's Sacred Spaces in Saqqara involves 3D inset widgets. So I hope I answered that question fully.
Yes. We've gotten this question a couple times about going back to collaborations. A few people have asked if it matters whether the collaborating parties or the technical assistance is from people who are not U.S. citizens or international contacts.
Yes. Whoever you work with on this does not have to be a U.S. citizen because you are the applicant, and as long as the applicant is a U.S. citizen or has resided in the U.S. for 3 years prior to the application deadline, that is what we care about for this grant. I did notice someone say something about artists. I will point out that one of our funding restrictions is that we cannot fund the production of art. So if someone is working with people to do diagrams or data visualizations or illustrations of a concept, that is fine. But if the collaboration involves the production of art, that part would not be fundable under this program.
We just got a question about the required time period, and to confirm, yes, 6 months is the minimum time period, and 12 months is the maximum. And again, the funds are calculated at $5,000 per month, so 6 months would be $30,000 and 12 months would be 60. So an award period for less than 6 months would not be considered in the program. Again, award periods have to be full-time and they have to be continuous. We don't allow for breaks in the award program. We just got a question that, Megan, the question is, would a humanities-focused digital tool that lets users generate interpretive frameworks on their own be eligible? This might be a question that we'll ask you to send us an email to talk more about. My sense is, we want all the projects that we fund are themselves interpretive. They should be advancing an original argument. Megan, you take it away from there.
Yeah. I'd love to chat with you longer via email just to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly. But if you're designing a new and innovative tool, this program might not be the best program for you. And I would suggest that you might want to look at the Office of Digital Humanities Advancement Grants. which are specifically designed to help foster the building of tools and platforms that support humanities research. But by all means, email us and we'll make sure that we're on the same page.
Yes, if not this program, we're only one little piece of an agency that funds lots of different things. So we're happy to help you try to find the right program if this isn't it. I think I've gotten through most of the questions that you've all posed in the chat, and if any more come through, we can answer them. Okay, how many grants are funded? I think, Megan, you said this year we're expecting to fund 5?
Yes, this year we're expecting to fund 4 to 5.
Okay. Just turning to some questions that I often get from a lot of people. When will I hear a decision from NEH? And the answer to that is you'll hear from us in December of this year, usually right before the holidays. And you can begin the award period. Correct me if I'm wrong, Megan, you can begin as soon as January of 2024. And what's the latest you can start by for this?
September 2024.
Okay, right. So you have 9-month window to begin the award period. Megan, do you have any tips for ways that people can put together a strong application, or frequent mistakes or oversights that they might want to look out for?
So one of the things I'm going to suggest is that you have a friend or colleague who is not in your immediate discipline read the application prior to submission. One of the things about these peer review panels is they do involve people with a wide variety of specialties. And so if you use lots of specialized language and jargon from your discipline, it might confuse or turn off scholars from another discipline. So, I mean, when you think we might have an application on Asian art history being read by a specialist in 19th century British literature, for example. So it's just very helpful to have someone who's not deeply embedded in your project help you figure out places where you might be being a little bit vague or confusing. The other thing to sort of remember is that we do really feel strongly about making sure that we are good stewards of taxpayer money. And so we are looking for information that will help us ascertain that the project you're going to build is not only feasible in the short term, but that you have an understanding of what will happen to it after the period of active maintenance is over. So we are looking for some information about that you've thought how long you're going to maintain it. We do not require you to maintain a project in perpetuity. That is completely unreasonable. But we ask that you think about the life cycle of your digital project as you move forward on this.
I think I would just add on the tech that while you certainly do not go over your page limits for each attachment, I would say use all the space that you have. We rarely, if ever, get a critique from a panelist that they had too much detail or too much explication of a project. So use all the space you can. You started talking about panelists a little bit there, Megan. Do you want to speak a little bit about who the peer reviewers panelists are for this program? How do we find them, and who are they?
So we get panelists from a wide variety of disciplines and interests in areas. The vast majority of them are scholars who have some digital humanities experience. They might be former awardees. We have people who have produced digital projects in various fields who we find through their digital project websites. We also quite often have librarians and digital project specialists from various institutions on these panels, people who work as technologists on collaborative projects, and people who can weigh in on the sustainability and technical aspects of these proposals. And they are at every range of academic status. So we have people who are assistant professors, we have people who are independent scholars, we have people who are staff at universities, as well as full professors weighing in on these.
And just to confirm, because I've gotten this sort of question in a lot of programs recently, we recruit a unique slate of panelists in each program for every review cycle. There's no sort of standing pool at NEH of people that we turn to for every application. We pull people from the field who agree to help us out for a particular cycle.
Or people who volunteer, as we have one here. Yes, you can volunteer to be a panelist. You cannot apply in the same year that you volunteer to be a panelist. So if you are planning to apply, we can't use you that year, but we would be happy to think about you in a future round.
Megan, who are advantageous people to ask to write letters of recommendation, and how are letters of recommendation used in the review process?
So it's important to find someone who can speak to the scholarly importance of your project. You have 2 letters of recommendation, and it is not necessarily the best idea to get the most senior, highest status person you can find. It's much better to have someone who's very familiar with your project and can explain why it's amazing. You also have the option now of we have this letter of community support, which I think is very important. So if your project involves, for example, a tribal community, we ask that you include a letter from that community showing that they are aware of your project and support it. That then provides you more space to use your letters of recommendation for people from your scholarly field to help make the case for scholarly significance.
How are reviewers, what are they looking for in letters, and what kinds of things do you see them say about them sometimes?
I find that reviewers vary quite widely in how much they use letters of recommendation. Um, a lot of times they're looking for things in the letters where they want to make sure that the project fits the understanding of the letter writer the way that they understood it from your application. So they're looking for how the letter writer presents the project and seeing if it makes sense with what you have written. How sometimes a letter writer will explain a project in a different way than the applicant, and sometimes that can very much help the applicant because they make the project clearer. Um, it's often used as a way to bolster what you're saying in your application.
We have a great question that just came in. Does it help to have acceptance for publication by a press that is planning to publish it digitally?
While it's not required, having such an acceptance can show a clear timeline because presses often really like to know when they're going to get their final product, and that can help speak to the feasibility of the project and its likelihood of success and completion, which are both criteria. So yes, it can be very helpful to have that in place, but it is not required, and the vast majority of our applicants do not have acceptance to a press when they apply.
Jumping back to letters of recommendation, someone just asked if should letters focus more on the applicant or on the project, or both?
Both, because both are criteria. So the scholarly significance of the project is what we sort of say first among equals among our criteria. Another criterion is the promise or the quality or promise of quality of the applicant as an interpreter of the humanities. And so quite often letters do speak to that. They speak to sort of previous publications, scholarly reputation, um, and your likelihood that you will complete. Many letter writers talk about their confidence in the applicant's ability to complete the project.
Um, um, I believe I've kind of caught up with most of the questions. We have a couple more minutes till the top of the hour if anybody has any final questions. Megan, a lot of people ask about the plan of work, their work plan document. Do you have any suggestions for how to put together a work plan that will impress the panelists or NEH personnel?
So, I've seen everything in a work plan from paragraph descriptions to a full-on Gantt chart. And I will say that if you get very fancy with charts and graphs, just make sure that your font is legibly sized. We don't require, the kind of color-coded project plan that many people might see in project management, but having a clear breakdown of when each activity is going to happen and a mark for any dependencies on outside forces like collaborators or editors at a press or anything like that can be very, very helpful. I do encourage people to explore the world of information outside of narrative formats because it's often easier for people to see what activities are going to happen when it's not in a narrative format.
Yeah, and I would just add, not to forget that even though we really do want to know what you'd be planning to do during the award period, the period in which we're giving you money to do the project, it is helpful to know what work you think may be done prior to the award period and what work you imagine may be done after the award period, as projects don't necessarily need to be completed during the award period. Does that sound right to you, Megan?
Yes, and I'm also noticing some people asking questions about the artwork again. And if there is an aspect of your project that is complementary to what you would like to have funded, but is something that we cannot fund, such as the production of a documentary or artwork, it is always possible that that might be produced outside of the award period. We have projects where we have funded um, a public-facing general audience website that includes multimedia and complements a documentary series, for example. Um, there's one it's called Heroines on the Home Front. It's about the waves in World War II. So if there's something that we cannot fund, it doesn't mean it can't be part of your project. It just means it can't be part of our funded part of the project. I also saw a question about the community's letters of support. It does not have to be from the most senior person in the community. And if there is a subset of the community that has been filmed or that is participating in oral histories or who are intimately involved in the project, they would be good candidates to supply that letter. That letter should show that the community is aware of the project and that they support you and your goals in producing the project.
We just got a great question from someone who application package, or does it have to be a PDF only? And I would first say that grants.gov is only going to accept PDF documents.
Yes.
If you submit anything other than a PDF, including a Word document, it's going to reject your submission and you're going to have to do it again. And then the second thing, Megan, I'm sure you have more to add, but please know that, especially in this program, you can feel free to put links in your application documents, but we can't ask panelists to review more than the application package. So they may click your links and look at what you've given them, but we can't guarantee that, and we can't ask them to do that.
Yeah. So what I would recommend in that case is that you have a static version that you put on the PDF. And if you want to also include a link to the interactive, if you do that, I recommend testing your PDF afterwards, making sure that you've put the link in plain text, not as linked text, so that if something goes wrong in the process of the PDF going through grants.gov, people can still access the link. We see lots of links come through where it's just words with a blue bar under it and no one knows what that means. And we do recommend that if you do include a link, that you test it and make sure it is working and active during the review window.
We have one more question that's just come in, that NEH has a number of digital grants. Can we clarify what makes this one, what's special about this one, what makes it unique? This is a fellowship, so this is made to individuals, whereas some of the programs offered by our Office of Digital Humanities those are more so institutional grants. So those are usually for teams of people who are applying through their institution for larger sums of money, providing budgets, doing all what you might think of as a more typical grant application. Whereas these fellowships are for individuals, and again, there's no budget. Is intended as salary replacement, the funds, and you're sort of working to produce an interpretive product, digital product. Megan, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, that's going to be the primary difference here. This is the only digitally focused program for individuals, although I will say that our main fellowships program also accepts digital products as potential outputs, as does our summer stipends program. So the big difference here is that we are focused on digital outcomes, and we are a program for individuals. We do not require you to apply from an organization.
And with that, I think we're close to the top of the hour, and I think we've answered everyone's questions. If we haven't answered your question or something occurs to you later, as we said before, feel free to reach out to us with this email address on the screen, fellowships@neh.gov. I'll be happy to answer you or forward your message to Megan for her to answer you. And we look forward to working with you in the future. Or I should say, I look forward to working with you in the future, and I will turn it back to you, Megan.
Yep. Thank you very much. I am going to answer one last question, which I saw come through, which was, does funding prevent other funding from being awarded? And the answer is, you cannot be funded twice for the same work, but you can be funded for two different portions of work on a larger project. So as long as the work plan is very clear and completely separate, you can be funded for different types of work. Also, this is a full-time award, and so you cannot hold another award at the same time. But we are happy to answer like detailed questions. Just email us. We're happy to address your specific circumstances. So thank you very much. I hope you all had a very informative afternoon, and I look forward to hearing from you and reading your drafts.
Thank you.
Bye.